As I mentioned, for those who are coming in, today is day 2 of Rosh Chodesh Elul. It's also, of course, Friday, so we are preparing for Shabbat, as we like to say on Friday, preparing our inner table, as it were, for Shabbat. Just want to invite us to begin today with that intention, to set our inner Shabbat table. So before we move into the teaching I'd like to share today, I just want to invite you to take a few moments to get settled in place. If you're just coming in, no problem. Just let yourself get settled and do your best to let go of whatever you've been occupied with. And let's see if we can be a little bit more present, maybe 5% more present than we were a few seconds ago. If it helps you to close your eyes, that's one way to go. But basically what we're doing is just bringing our awareness inward, aware of our bodies, that we are embodied beings, maybe taking note and doing a quick scan of our bodies to make sure we're all here, all the parts, being aware of the fingers, toes, all the extremities, and noticing ourselves as an embodied being. And practicing Shabbat with that by just accepting our bodies exactly as they are. Releasing any judgments or opinions about their current state. Really celebrating that we're alive right now in our bodies. Let's bring some Shabbat consciousness to our awareness of our physical beings. And as we did a week ago, also just continuing the same scan of our being right now, moving from our physical being to our emotional life, and taking a few moments to notice what feelings are stirred up for you right now in this moment. Not how you felt when you woke up, not how you are hoping to feel or you wish you felt, but how do you really feel right now? Numb, grateful, joyful, sad, guilty, angry, any of the above or more. And maybe some combination of the above, or maybe numb, maybe your emotions are not accessible to you right now. We're just noting that, we're not opining, not judging, just observing. Something we might do over the course of the day. What am I feeling? Noticing the state of mind. Again, noting any opinions about our state of mind. Oh, I wish I weren't so agitated, or I wish I weren't so jumpy. Wish I had a clear, steady, calm, clear mind. Just noticing the extent to which the snow globe of the mind is shaken up right now and thoughts are swirling around, or whether they're slowly settling so that snow globe of the mind is a little bit more clear. And breathing as we do each of these, as we move through these different dimensions. And finally, of course, there's a tradition on Shabbat. We're endowed with an extra soul, a neshama yetera, which we can understand. Maybe it's just having increased awareness of the presence of our neshama, of our soul, our spirit. So whether you believe in a soul or not, see if you can acknowledge the immaterial aspect of yourself, your essential self. That is not synonymous with your physical body or what you're feeling or what you're thinking. The part of you that is independent of that, your essence, which, as we are to be reminded each morning, is tahora, it's pure, it's untouched, pure soul. See if we can make friends with our soul and welcome it back for Shabbat. If you'd like, you can just stay with if your eyes are closed, stay with your eyes closed. You can open them if you like to be with the group, but just stay with awareness of body, emotion, mind, state, spiritual condition right now. See if you can stay aware of your body, stay aware of your feelings, stay aware of your mind state, stay aware of your spiritual state right now. The Shabbat is, the Torah portion is Shoftim, literally means judges. It's been mentioned earlier this week as well. And the Torah portion begins with instructions for the creation of the judicial system for the new society that the Israelites are going to create, set up in the land when they get there. And it's a very powerful passage. On a literal level, it seems to apply to that actual act of setting up courts, a court system, judicial system. But of course, our tradition understands it as well as much more than that. So I'm going to share my screen for a minute. Again, you don't need to look at the screen if you prefer not. I'm going to read everything to you, and everything that I share will be shared. You can look at it later. But the Torah portion begins, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol she'arecha. Appoint judges, Shoftim, and officers, Shotrim, for yourselves in all your gates, which Adonai your God gives you tribe by tribe. And they shall judge the people with mishpat tzedek, v'shavtu et ha'am mishpat tzedek. You shall not wrest judgment. Don't show favors. Don't favor people. Don't take a bribe. Ki hashochad ye'aver einei chachamim, because a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the words of the righteous. And then, of course, a very famous passage, tzedek, tzedek tirdov, justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may live and inherit the land which Adonai your God gives you. So, as we've learned earlier this week, this idea of gates can be understood literally as the gates of the city where the courts would meet, but they also could be understood as the gates of our senses and faculties, as we learned earlier this week. It can be understood as the gates of our mind, the gates of our imagination. The Zohar understands these openings in many dimensions. So when we're attending to the gates through which our thoughts emerge, the gates through which we interface with the world with our faculties, all of our faculties, our intuition as well as our physical senses. We are to place judges in all those gates, in each of those gates. And the instruction for the judges is that they should judge with mishpat tzedek. There's a beautiful interpretation of those words, mishpat tzedek, that I learned from my friend, colleague, teacher, Rabbi Miles Krasson, who teaches that the Hasidic master, Rabbi Elimelech, who wrote a commentary on the Torah called the Sefer Noam Elimelech, teaches that we have to make sure that our judges will make a judgment that's righteous, mishpat tzedek, which means, he interprets to mean, don't make a judgment that creates a state in which you don't recognize the presence of God, the divine presence. For if you bribe yourself with anything less, you will lose your wisdom eye and any claim of righteousness will be a distortion. The purpose, and here's I emphasize this in quoting Rabbi Miles Krasson, the purpose of the inner judge is not only to enable us to act with intention, but to show us a way that can maintain, strengthen, and renew our inner access to the witnessing eye of wisdom. The wisdom, what is the wisdom eye? The wisdom eye is the inner quality within each of us that enables us to be aware of the divine countenance, the divine presence. We need to provide ourselves with judges who can determine for us how to be in continuous relationship with presence in any situation. So for our sit today, we are going to just bring attention to the judges that are sitting in the gates of our imagination, our thoughts. And Jewish tradition gives us some advice about what kind of judges these are. We should aspire for them to be ones that help us acquire or nurture our wisdom eye and keep us connected to the divine presence. Number one, we should judge with generosity, with mercy. Pirkei Avot instructs us to give every person the benefit of the doubt, to begin by assuming innocence, by looking for the good, by elevating the good, not by looking for what is wrong or by assuming the worst. We should assume the best. We should assume good intentions. We should give the benefit of the doubt. Dan et kol adam l'chav zchut is a term in Pirkei Avot. Judge each person by the merit, but with favor. Be favorable. Be a merciful judge. But of course, also be a judge that is seeking out the truth and what is just, but justice that's tempered with mercy. That's one way of understanding Mishpat Tzedek. And that's really our work for the month of Elul, is to really examine, to sit as a judge and to try to imagine that judge as the divine judge who is examining ourselves, examining our actions, our words, but doing so with love and generosity, as a judge who only wants the best for us, who loves us unconditionally, but also wants us to see ourselves clearly and not to bribe ourselves through self-interest or ego, or the need to be right, or the need to feel better than someone else, or the need to denigrate ourselves, all for the purpose of coming closer to the divine. Judgment that is only informed by a desire to experience a sense of deep connection, to see ourselves as we imagine God might see us, lovingly, mercifully, clearly. So that's our intention for practice. So here's the suggestion, as we said, is just to pay close attention to the voice of the judge sitting in the gates in your mind, whether it's judging your body, judging your actions, whether it's thinking about someone maybe who's displeased you or hurt you. See if it can bring some mercy, some compassion to that judgment. See if you give yourself the benefit of the doubt, give the other the benefit of the doubt. Especially as we move into Shabbat, which is really a day of pure chesed. See if we can release the harshness of the judgment. So let's sit for about the next 9 minutes. The prayer that we pursue tzedek, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, that our judgments may be for the sake of seeing what is clear, seeing clearly what is true, and to judge ourselves and others with mercy. Let's sit. Our teacher, Sylvia Boorstein, is fond of saying in meditation, we might say to ourselves, may I meet this moment fully. May I meet it as a friend. In this case, we might just adapt that to say, may I judge myself, may I judge others with love, with compassion, with mercy. The last few minutes of our practice, I invite you to consider this community of practice joining us today. 212 souls. And I imagine there's very little harsh judgment happening among us right now. Just over 200 souls sitting together quietly, wishing the best, assuming the best about each other. And we take that same understanding of judgment and bring it out into our directions in the world so that we can be clear in discernment in our judgment, untainted by self-interest or ego, not taking bribes, but seeing as clearly as we can from a place of compassion and love and mercy. Judging others as we wish to be judged. And receiving slowly, taking our time, 3 deep breaths, allowing the air to fill the lungs and the belly. Experiencing the chiyut, the divine life force filling and enlivening us. Just sitting and breathing into Shabbat together. When you're ready, if your eyes have been closed, slowly just allow them to flutter open. Come back to our group. Throughout the month of Elul, we conclude our sits, as is traditional during the month of Elul, to hear the sound of the shofar before we turn to the mourner's Kaddish. So going to, first of all, thank in advance our friend John Silver, member of Congregation B'nai Jeshurun in New York City, and a member of the board of directors of IJS, who will be sounding the shofar for us today. And thanks for doing so for us today, John. Need to make, hold on, John, we'll make you, John, we need to make John a co-host if he haven't already. All right, let's do this. John, can you unmute or no?
Yes.
Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. I just want to sort of offer this kavanah for the shofar this time. So, as this may be, it probably is the first time you're hearing the shofar this year. This is the first time I'm sounding the shofar this year. And what I'm going to ask is not just to hear the sound of the shofar, but also be aware of what resonates within you when you hear the sound of the shofar. With those judges at all your sensory gates, what arises. And also, the shofar is loud and piercing. So it's kind of just a warning here. So if it may be loud, that's because it is.
Thank you so much, John. Friends, I'm going to put a link in the chat for our program at B'nai Jeshurun that John will be doing with their senior rabbi, Rabbi Relay Montalon, on knocking on the gates of mercy, spiritual preparation to hear the shofar in September. And we seal our practice today, as we do every day, by offering an opportunity. Those of you who are in mourning, observing your site, or if you customarily join for Mourner's Kaddish, are invited to do so. If you're not reciting Kaddish, please stay present. Offer your compassionate support for those who are, and you can put the name or names of those who are honoring in the chat box now, or after you recite Kaddish. And if you are reciting Kaddish, inviting you to join me by rising in body or in spirit to recite the words together. Thanks to Andrew for sharing. And you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah. Me'ama, Divrach, Yirutei, Me'alif, Malchutei, B'chaye Kon, Yomei Kon, Chaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ha'ala, Bizman, Kariv, Amen. Rabba, Mevarach, Le'olam, Me'amaya. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Ba'ar, V'yom, V'naseh, V'tadar, V'yitalel, V'yival, Shmei, V'kusha, V'yichu. Ela, V'yichu, Birchata, V'shurata, V'shata, V'nefamata, Amiran, Ba'alma, V'yimru. Amen. Shlama Rabbanim Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'Yalko Yisrael V'Yimru Amen. Yaseh Shalom B'Mramav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Yalko Yisrael V'Yalko Yoshei Tevel V'Yimru Amen. Thanks, Andrew, and thanks everyone for being here today. I want to thank you, John Silver, so much for always powerful sounding of the shofar. I think everyone did hear it. Yeah, it's good. Everyone's in good shape for today. It's a wonderful start to the month of Elul. And thanks to Andrew Schulman for holding our tech space today. Thanks most of all to each of you for being here. I want to encourage you to join us next week. We'll have a full week of practice and wonderful teachers lined up for next week. On Monday, Rabbi Mira Nishama Weil, who due to a scheduling snafu, we didn't get to learn with Mira this past week, but she will lead us on Monday. Rabbi Jenny Solomon on Tuesday, Shefa Gold on Wednesday, Robin Damsky on Thursday, and Rebecca Schisler will be back to lead us a week from today to sit into Shabbat together. So we hope you'll join us for any or all of those. Of course, as always, you're welcome to stay on. Happy to respond to questions, or feel free just to share reflections on your experience with our sit today, or you can just use this time and space and or the container of this community to continue to sit. I am going to share. So if you're leaving now, I want to wish everyone who's leaving now a Shabbat Shalom. If you're staying on, I'm going to share a song by the great Israeli songwriter and singer Meir Banai, called Sha'ar HaRachamim, the Gate of Mercy, which is a nice connection with the workshop that you, John, and Rabbi Roli will be doing at B'nai Jeshurun. I think it's September 12th. But I'm going to see if there's any questions to respond to first. But if not, that's a little bonus. There's a question. Thank you, Susan, for your question. Also, question about judgment. Okay. And what about the what about question that comes up all the time, and it comes up for me too. But what about, how can I judge mercifully this person or this group of people? So it gives me an opportunity just to clarify that judging with mishpat tzedek, understood in this way as judging with mercy, with compassion, doesn't mean not judging, and it doesn't mean not taking action. It doesn't mean not making a discernment. It means tempering judgment with those qualities. It doesn't mean not taking action to protect ourselves. It doesn't mean drawing boundaries or setting limits. Judges have to do this all the time. That's what judges do. They set boundaries. They set limits. But I think what we're learning here, at least when I'm offering in this upfront, in this take on the Torah portion, which is the primary Jewish text about judgment, about how to judge, is that there are a number of different ways in which we can temper judgment. One of which is a teaching we get from the Jewish mystical tradition, which is that when we notice ourselves judging others harshly, it is a good opportunity for us to notice what is it about what we're seeing in others that we might find in ourselves, maybe not quite in the same measure, but which disturbs us about ourselves. That's an opportunity to work on ourselves. So paradoxically, someone or a group of people who disturb us actually in that moment can be understood as our teachers, helping us look at that quality in ourselves. So that's one way to temper judgment. Another that we get from the Jewish mystical tradition is to look for the good in each person, or to hold on to something that might be good or untouched about the other person or group of people, which is not to say not to have judgments about what is problematic about them and not to act on that judgment, but to not lose sight of the humanity of the other, not to otherize or demonize the other. So I guess that's pretty much what I have to share about that. Let's see. Oh, there's a lot here. Hmm. Could it be that we're asked to exercise judgment for the sake of heaven, not as any hereafter, but as the reality that wants to be released from husks of ego and greed? And all that's based on fear and the last resort of vulnerability and the ultimate shared vulnerability of death. Well, Margaret, thank you so much for that. That sounds more like a beautiful observation than a question, but that goes to the heart, I think, of what I was hoping to offer is that I think that we're asked to exercise judgment not for our sake, but for the sake of heaven, for the sake of the divine. I think that's what Rabbi Krasson is getting at with that reference to the wisdom eye, a wisdom eye that transcends the self, that's bigger than ourselves. And the work that we're doing, for those of you who are working with the teaching from Rabbi Alalu's book, This is Real, You're Completely Unprepared, this week that we're wrapping up, this first week, is really about letting down the walls of self and ego and growing an awareness of the what he calls that void, that emptiness that is the source of our existence and that we are connected to. And if we are able to have a sense of connection, even briefly to that, that gives us an opportunity that will inform the judgments that we have of ourselves and others. We're meant to appoint those kinds of judges, not self-serving judges, not judges who are blinded by what's subjective, but by what is really true, what is good for the whole. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again, share a piece of let's see if I can do it this way. Well, let's do it this way. I'm going to share my screen first. This is the song I referred to, Shahar Achamim by Meir Banai. I'm just going to read the English translation of it, but if you have the text, you'll see you have access to it, and there's a link to the music, which I'll play in a moment. I want to invite us to end our sit today by listening to the song, but first just to see what the song is speaking of. And he's describing going about the old city in Jerusalem. He says, I go about the old city and sound comes from every corner. I already know my way to the gate of mercy, Sha'ar Harachamim. I don't look around. I don't listen. I'm a dreaming man, and so it's always been. But I already know my way, the way to the gate of mercy. I live once, just once. There's a reason. There's no reason. With strength, without strength, the gate of mercy. Come with me together. Come from the midst of fear, because you too are part of the gate of mercy. The signs over the shops look out over the streets. In my heart, there is an outcry, and it is loud. Maybe that sound of the shofar, the outcry of the heart that says, show me the gate of mercy. Aruli et sha'ar harachamim. Show me the gate of mercy. So that gate that is referred to, the Sha'ar Rachamim, is also understood as the Sha'ar Zahav, the Golden Gate. That's the gate of the old city in Jerusalem that's been sealed up for centuries. That, according to Jewish tradition, is the gate through which the Mashiach, the Messiah, will enter. So it really represents messianic hopes and dreams and ideals. And it's connected with that quality of Rachamim. And in our tradition, in the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, there's an image of God shifting on Rosh Hashanah from the Kisei Shel Din, the seat of judgment, to the Kisei Shel Rachamim, the seat of compassion. That's the movement, that judgment becomes tempered with Rachamim. And I can't remember offhand right now, but of course, one of our teachers this past week pointed out that the word Rachamim, compassion, derives from the root, which has the connotation of womb, womb-like love, womb-like love. That's the kind of judgment that comes from a sense of being totally embraced and supported in love. So that's, for many of us, that's a shift in how we understand the judging God of the high holidays and of this time of year. So I'm going to play the music to the song. I want to invite us to sit for the last 3 minutes just by listening to it, and we'll come back in just a minute.
מסתובב בעיר הישנה ורעש בא מכל פינה. אני מכיר כבר את דרכי, הדרך אל שער הרחמים. לא מביט סביב, לא מקשיב, איש חולם אני, וכך היה תמיד. אבל מכיר כבר את דרכי, הדרך אל שער הרחמים. חי פעם, רק פעם, יש טעם, אין טעם, עם כוח, בלי כוח, שער הרחמים. בואי איתי יחד, בואי מתוך הפחד, כי את גם את חלק משער הרחמים. השלטים מעל החנויות משקיפים על הרחובות, בתוך ליבי יש צעקה והיא גדולה. הראו לי את שער הרחמים. חי פעם, רק פעם, יש טעם, אין טעם, עם כוח, בלי כוח, שער הרחמים. בואי איתי יחד, בואי.
Friends, may we train the judges that are sitting in the gates of our minds, and our senses, our faculties, to see as clearly as possible, to see wisely, see with that eye, that wisdom eye, that's informed by Rachamim. We might place those judges in the Shahar Rachamim. So I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom and thank Marc Shmaria for sponsoring our sit today. You're so beautiful with that beautiful dedication, Marc, to your mom. We're grateful to you for being here and grateful for lifting up her memory and her neshama today. Thanks, Andrew, and thanks to John Silver for sounding the shofar so powerfully for us today. And we hope to see you all on Monday. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom, a sweet and restorative Shabbat. And we'll see you next week. Blessings, everyone.